Greetings Board. This is ISI number 2, Bilingual Education. An introduction to bilingual education is that it is for English language learners who are students with varying levels of English language proficiency who do not speak English. There are two main types of education for them, which is bilingual education, where all content is taught in their native language as well as English. And then there's English as a second language, where the English language learners learn all aspects of English grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation. There is a need for this kind of education because the United States is a multicultural and multilingual society, and it will continue to be. Another thing is that it takes teachers and their responsibility to provide adequate instruction for these English language learners, to foster effective transition of language, and to promote language maintenance. In order to fully understand why we need bilingual education, we need to understand that it was founded during the Civil Rights Movement, and it is a civil right for these students. Two laws that mandate bilingual education are the 1968 Bilingual Education Act and the 2000 No Child Left Behind Act. The 1968 Bilingual Education Act was the first act that recognized the needs of English language learners or limited English speaking ability students. It provided grants to school districts to establish programs for English language learners. It was the first of its kind that really showed that we needed to do something about these English language learners who were going into school not speaking English and not doing well in school because of their lack of English proficiency. In 2001, it was time for the school districts to be accountable for serving these language minority students. It required them to hire fully certified teachers, promote English language development, and it was required that each state measure the English language development of these students. There are lots of benefits of bilingual education. 4 of them are biliteracy and bilingualism, reading comprehension and additive bilingualism, as well as utilizing a student's primary language in instruction. A benefit being to the students is that they will not only know how to read and write in English and speak English, but know how to read, write, and speak another language. For reading comprehension, these students are having to learn to read in one language and read in another language, so they have a variety of resources to pull from when they are test taking. Bilingual education allows for students to be bilingual, and they do not lose their native language, which is additive bilingualism. And the last benefit I'm going to talk about is that it utilizes a student's primary language in instruction. A lot of the programs start with the student's native language first. In those lower grades, they learn their beginning skills and foundations in their native language. So one program is the dual language program, which is also called two-way program. It is bicultural, it is biliteracy, it's bilingual. It allows for students with varying language proficiencies, whether it be English or Spanish or another native language, to become proficient in both languages. It is a late exit program, which typically begins in kinder and is stated by Wright in the Foundations for Teaching English Language Learners. It's a valuable resource for students in the future. And these students get to stay in the classroom, which means that they are not being pulled out for ESL instructions. And the more you can keep the students in the classroom, the better it is for them. Some disadvantages are that it's not a great option if there are different languages spoken in the community. It's only good if there is a large population of one language spoken. Another disadvantage is that English is so dominant in the United States that the second language may not be valued as much as English. And then another disadvantage is that it requires a high level of community support, and involvement, both financial and human, in order to find these qualified teachers, to have enough students for the program, and to have the materials. The next program is transitional bilingual education, which is the most common type of bilingual education, which means that it has the most funding and the most backing from the federal government. It begins with the student's home language, so the students learn skills and foundation in their native language, and it is a transition, so that means that the more they go into school, the less native language they get to use. So eventually they will be placed in a immersion or monolingual English classroom. But because it's transitional, the students can take music, PE, and art or other similar classes in English, which can help their social development by interacting with English proficient peers. Some disadvantages are that it is seen as a language is seen as a problem orientation. The goals are to transition these children into monolingual classes, which is basically assimilating them. And it is also an early exit program, which the federal government only suggests that they are in these types of classes for 3 years, when studies show that 5 to 7 years is a more realistic time frame for learners to reach those levels, comparable to their native English-speaking peers. The last program I'm going to talk about is the Sheltered English Immersion, which is great for all grade levels, K through 12. It is self-contained, which means that all the students in the classroom are receiving English as a second language for about 30 to 60 minutes a day. All the subjects are taught in English. It helps all students, so it helps all students from diverse language backgrounds to acquire the content as well as the English language. Several materials are used to do this, and there's lots of resources to help teach that, such as bilingual aids, adapted text, and physical activities to get the students to understand English. Some disadvantages are, though, it has to be a highly qualified, specific English as a second language curriculum. If not, it might as well be a sink or swim classroom. So the teachers that get hired onto this program need to fully understand what their curriculum needs to be to meet these students' needs. It is an assimilation program, which only focuses on English monolingualism, which is not ideal, but it needs to happen sometimes when there is a diverse language background of students. Some programs, by sheltered, it means that they do not attend other classes with English-speaking peers, which really helps them develop those social language skills. My recommendation for this school district is a transitional bilingual education, because it can be evolved into a dual language or other stronger bilingual education program. It receives the greatest support from the federal government, which means that you would get great support from the federal government for this program. I recommend this one because it allows students to use some home language, and later on we can transition it into a dual language. But given our situation and our population, it would be best to start with this and see if we do have the resources and support to have a bilingual dual language classroom. The first principle is that if students learn in their native language, if that is not possible, this is the next best option, which I think is a really great option for students, especially our students, that we show that we value their home language, but we still want them to be English proficient. And it would help us get our feet up and running to eventually have a dual language program if we start with ESL, transitional bilingual education. Thank you for listening. I hope you take my presentation into consideration when making your decision for this school district.